The Tigers put up a lot of zeros in this ball game against the Minnesota Twins. Almost every inning was actually a zero, but that sixth inning cost them the game. A grand slam was hit, etc. We got a lot to discuss with this one, so let's talk about it all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Wednesday, August 16th, 2023. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Be sure to check out the Tigers home broadcast on the SiriusXM app. Just search Detroit Tigers. The next thing you know, you're listening to the Tigers home radio broadcast anytime, anywhere. Very cool app, very cool feature. Okay, let's talk about this ball game. Tigers lose 5-3 at the hands of the Minnesota Twins in Minnesota on Tuesday night. I mean, like I said, this was I guess the Twins didn't bat in the bottom of the ninth. So for 7 innings of the 8 innings our pitching staff was on the mound, went really well. Really well, actually. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about Faedo. We'll talk about the decision to go to the pen. We'll talk about the relievers that pitched, etc. But it actually was pretty strong. But there was one inning from heck where a grand slam was hit, defensive miscues happened, and next thing you know, you're on the losing end because of it. Now, this offense is not off the hook either. It will get lost in translation, but it won't get lost on this show. All right. The offense, while certainly, they didn't get shut out or anything, but they had scored 2 runs going into the 9th inning, and then Torkelson hit a home run, monster of a home run, hit a homer off of one of the best relievers in baseball, made it 5-3. But they had opportunities to score runs and make this a ball game. There was clutch ABs. Even after it was already 5-2, you had runners on base at points, you had opportunities to score runs, and you did not come through in those situations. So I don't want that to get lost. That yes, this bullpen absolutely threw up all over itself, and if you're looking at again, I say this all the time. I make it very clear. I don't believe that any one player or group or play is ever responsible for single-handedly winning or losing a baseball game. So I don't subscribe to that anyway. So yes, the bullpen certainly puked all over itself, but this offense certainly could have been a lot better than it was, which is something we say all the time. If you average 3 runs a game all year, you're not going to be a very good offense. You're actually going to be a pretty darn bad one. So let's talk about this ball game, though. Let's start with the defense. We're going to start. Usually, I feel like we tend to start with starting pitching on this show, and I'm not really sure why. Just the way my brain operates, I just tend to naturally want to talk about the starting pitching, whoever the starting pitcher is first. But in this scenario, we're going to start with the defense because there was a couple of really not great defensive plays. The Tigers end the game with no errors because that's how baseball just calls games today. But there are a couple of mishaps in this ball game that definitely should not have happened. And I believe it was in the 6th inning, the Matt Vierling and Eric Haas just stare at each other and a ball drops. And then, what happened the rest of the inning happened. So this is just a situation where I don't want to call it an experiment because Matt Vierling has played third base before, but we'll call it the experience. Okay. I've obviously been a big advocate for him getting legitimate look at third base. And that's certainly going to come with its lumps. We've talked before. He hasn't played a perfect third. He hasn't been bad for sure, but he's made a couple of plays like this. He's had the ball bounce out of his glove a couple of times. It certainly hasn't been a perfect experience, I guess is what we're calling it. But stuff like this is going to happen, and it really sucks that it happened in this ball game and what happened after it happened. But that's what the last month and a half of the season is for. That's what this is for. growing pains and trying stuff out and seeing what sticks. So if he ends up just playing a terrible third, and I don't think that that's either one of their faults 100%. I blame both of them. That they both deserve to get chewed out for that nonsense. Major league ball players, let's maybe not let the ball fall in between us. And I'm sure they'd tell you the same thing. That kind of stuff just can't happen. Communication, right? Taught in Little League, communication. So that was certainly not a great start. But again, like this was just not a very tight defensive ball game. There was actually one really good defensive play, the double play that was turned was beautiful. And I love how the broadcast booth, I'm not, one of those people that just craps all over our broadcast booth to no end, but it was funny to me that the booth got super excited about this double play when we're down 3 runs late in the ball game. All right. I mean, hey, if it leads to us getting a win, I guess, but I don't know. I don't know about that, big dog, but yeah, it was certainly a nice play, but outside of that, it was, I don't want to use the word sloppy necessarily, just because I don't know. Again, they put up 7 zeros, but it certainly could have been a lot smoother and a lot cleaner. I guess we'll say maybe not sloppy, but could have been cleaner. Could have touched up, used your napkin a little bit more. The offense in this ball game, as I said at the beginning, certainly not going to get off just without some criticism in my eyes on this show. 1 for 5 with runners in scoring position. Had runners in scoring position with 2 outs. Did you have a bases loaded scenario? Am I remembering that right? Bases loaded, struck out. I mean, you just not clutch, not a lot of clutch hitting. And one of the scenarios in this game that produced itself, that doesn't make any sense. One of the scenarios that came to be was Diaz up with runners in scoring position and 2 outs, and he struck out. And I know that I literally just said yesterday that it's not a big deal, it's a couple of games, and it's certainly no guarantee that Javi would have done anything different in that situation, even though Javi's stats with runners in scoring position are actually not that bad compared to the rest of the team. But I know I'm not going to win that argument if I'm it would have been way different with the general public. But my point is, you could have called up anybody on the 40-man roster, and you called up the dude who his numbers on the season are now an 0.42 batting average and a 157 OPS. Now, it's obviously a small sample size, but I mean, golly, his career major league numbers are not any better. Well, they're a little better, but they're in the hundreds. They're not good. So it's tough. I would have liked to see Ryan Kreidler. He's back. He did miss a lot of time due to injury. He's only been back a week or so. I get it. But at the same time, man. And it's I don't just want to make this a Diaz thing. This isn't me just being oh, if they just called up the right person, we would have won this ball game. This team all year has been terrible with runners in scoring position, and terrible with the bases loaded, and terrible at clutch hitting, and terrible in high leverage situations. This game's no different. Frustrating stuff. Let's keep the ball rolling. We'll talk about some things that went right offensively, and then we will obviously talk about the pitching. The thing that everybody kind of wants to talk about, was one of the bigger storylines in this baseball game. But first, I got to tell you all about our new friends over at Bunches. Locked On Tigers fans, I have to tell you about this new app called Bunches. Bunches is a new app that's built for sports fans where you can chat in real time about sports. You click the link. You can click the link in our show notes of this episode, or the description of this episode if you're listening to the audio version, to join the app, or go to the Apple App Store and download Bunches now. I'm telling you, you're going to love the conversation with other Locked On sports fans. It's the place where sports fans come to chat. There's MLB group, Locked On MLB group chats on Bunches. You can go there now and connect with other fans, chat with your favorite team, and keep up with the latest MLB news. It's awesome. If you have any questions or comments about episodes you hear on the Locked On Network, chat about it on Locked On MLB Bunch on Bunches. It's very, very cool. It's a very cool new thing, and I'm really excited to start using it with y'all. So download the Bunches app today, and when you do, your friends at Bunches your friends at Bunches have featured the Locked On MLB Bunch in the quote Discover tab. You can also click the link again in the description or the show notes to join the Locked On MLB Bunch community today. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, making us your first listen every day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We'll be back tomorrow recapping the series finale, I guess, of this 2-game series against the Minnesota Twins. Be sure to check out the Tigers home broadcast on the SiriusXM app. Just search Detroit Tigers, and then you'll be listening to the Tigers home radio broadcast. So the offense. There was some stuff that went right offensively. We did score 3 runs. Like I said, Spencer Torkelson homering off of, arguably the best reliever in baseball is pretty sweet. Pretty awesome. Threw that splinker, I think he calls it, that splitter sinker pitch. And Torkelson took it to the upper deck. So that was cool. Didn't matter in terms of the ball game. Game was already out of reach. They weren't going to win it, but it was cool. And I actually thought that the at-bats they put up against Duran were actually pretty respectable given how unbelievable he is. So I guess for whatever that's worth to you, that's not a bad thing. The lineup I was pretty fine with, whatever, no real complaints. We've talked about Vierling in the middle of the lineup before, how at first it looks kind of weird. Then you realize that, I mean, geez, play the OPS game with me. I mean, this just, oh my goodness. This team is still so far away. Oh man, look this OPS. Let's play the OPS game. Leadoff 665. Pinch hitter for leadoff later in the game 670. Two hitter 837. Then 708, 726, 855, 668, 662, 157, which is miraculously somehow a real OPS, and then 529. There are 2 OPSs in this entire lineup that are above major league average, and only 4 that are above 700, 2 that are above league average. Thankfully, those 2 that are above league average are above 800, actually both above 835. 2 pretty darn good hitters in Riley Green and in Kerry Carpenter. But my goodness, the entire bottom 4 of your lineup, 668 OPSs and worse. And your leadoff hitter, which is super definitely the good sign of a really solid offense. Still a lot of work to do. We just talked about that yesterday. Not breaking news to anybody, but still a long way to go as far as the offense goes. Even Torque, 1 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. The homer was great. Taking steps in the right direction. He's been better the last couple of weeks. We'll gladly take it, but still not even a major league average OPS yet. So still working on. Again, we talked about it yesterday as well. If his last 6 weeks can be really solid, I think that will help his standing within the organization and the fan base a lot. So for whatever that's worth to him, which the fan base, I'm not going to speak for him, whatever. So let's talk about Alex Faedo. I don't think there's anything else I really want to say about the offense. Riley Green, 0 for, still batting over 300 with an 837 OPS. Kerry Carpenter, continues to just take very professional at-bats. I thought the walk he drew was an incredibly professional at-bat. I thought that was incredible. Just getting pounded with high fastballs. High fastball, high fastball, high fastball, high fastball. He's fouling them off. He's taking the balls high. He's fouling off the pitches, that the ones that are actually in the strike zone. And then eventually he works a walk. I thought that was a beautiful AB. We'll talk about Miggy a little bit later. Not too much else to report besides that. Relatively quiet day at the plate besides Torque and Miguel. So let's talk about Alex Faedo. This is probably the main event of the evening. Alex Faedo goes 5 innings, 1 hit, no earned runs, 1 walk, and 6 strikeouts. He was really solid. He was really solid in this ball game. And the line, I think, was probably I don't want to say a little bit better than like it should have been. Like, I mean, again, he was great, and the results are the results. They're the same question marks, I guess I'll word it that way, that I have had about Alex Faedo did not just magically disappear, and were not the reason that he was good. He was just executing what he is good at really well, and it got him a win. This is a dude that in 81 pitches, his most thrown pitch was the slider. Almost 45% of his 81 pitches were the slider, and it had a 50 CSW percentage, called strikes plus whiffs percentage. Half of his most thrown pitch in an outing were either called strikes or swinging miss strikes. That is phenomenal. That is unbelievable. So really, really solid stuff out of the slider, which has always been and always will be his best pitch. The fastball was not like uber effective. That being said, no one really got a hold of one. I think it was located pretty solidly, didn't get a lot of swings and misses and whatnot, but got a decent amount of called strikes. I thought he was on the edge. He was on the black with it more times than not. And then the changeup is still very much a kind of throw you off type of offering, but I thought it was sequenced pretty decently with the four-seam fastball in this one. He tried to do the low fastball, low changeup sequence a lot. That's a very, very common and effective tunneling sequence, and I thought he did okay with it. So he ends with only 8 whiffs, 6 of them on the slider, only 2 between the four-seam fastball and the changeup, but was pounding the zone, and that's really, at the end of the day, I can appreciate that more than really anything else. That's one of my biggest things is just do not beat yourself. The numbers are in your favor as a pitcher, right? The greatest hitters of all time, you know, the old adage, right? The greatest hitters of all time are still going to fail 7 out of 10 times. Not get on base 7 out of 10 times. I guess maybe get on base 6 out of 10 times. So throw the ball in the strike zone. And that's what he did in this game. And that is what I appreciated more than anything else. I still have questions about the four-seam fastball long-term. I still have a ton of questions about whether the changeup is actually a major league pitch long-term. But the slider is objectively a massive plus pitch. And he pounded the zone in this one. Only the one walk and was very effective. Got a lot of called strikes with all 3 pitches, to be honest. So, effective outing. Now, he was pulled with 81 pitches going into the 6th inning, and the 6th inning then absolutely imploded. I don't disagree with this decision. And we say it all the time that this is a bullpen decisions are so difficult when they go poorly to like look back and be like, oh yeah, like that was, I mean, clearly the wrong decision. We lost the game and we gave up 5 runs in half an inning. So like, yeah, obviously what AJ and what the staff decided did not work out, but in a vacuum, I didn't really have an issue with it. And Cisnero has just been, unfortunately, really struggling since the mid-July, I guess. His ERA has ballooned over the last like 4 weeks. And Will Vest, we talked about yesterday, has had now 2 outings since coming back from injury. One, he walked 2 batters pretty much immediately. And now in this one, he gave up 2 hits and a grand slam. So not the best return from the IL for him either. Obviously, he still has good enough stuff. But certainly both 2 guys that very much could use a turnaround in the last month and a half of the season. But as far as the decision goes, again, like I didn't have an issue with it at the time. There are some numbers that certainly back up the decision as well. Alex Faedo, if you just look in 2023 by inning, okay, the first 3 innings, hitters have a 657 OPS against him. In innings 4 through 6, we're not even talking, 7 through 9. Innings 4 through 6, he has a 500 slug against him and an 819 OPS. Now, he got through 4 and 5. and was still solid. And I understand that you have to have, you don't want to be in that position where you're the Rays in the playoffs and Blake Snell is dealing and you pull him because of whatever says so. Like I understand you don't want to be in that position, and Faedo did well. Clearly, in hindsight, I would have preferred they just sent him out there for the sixth. But I mean, if you again like looking at first time through the lineup, 576 OPS against him. Second time through the lineup, 858 OPS against him. That's a huge spike up. And third time through the lineup, 786 OPS against him. And that's only because he usually doesn't make it to the third time through the lineup. So, like, this was a very, very effective start. Incredible. I mean, there's so many more. Pitch count. 1 through 25, 473 OPS against in the first 25 pitches of an outing. 26 through 50, 975, 51 through 75, 913. And then again, hasn't really gotten the opportunity to go into that territory of over 80 pitches. Now, the counter to what all these numbers I'm giving is he blew past. He was at 81 pitches and he was doing well. So, and he had already gone through the lineup twice. So, like, send him out there. Again, I don't disagree with that either. I'm not, like, hard set on, like, oh, he absolutely needed to come out. But in the moment, that is how I grade managerial decisions, not based on what the result is. I base it off in the moment. Was I super upset that Faedo got pulled? No, I was not. And that's as much as I know. And I know that the decision they went with obviously didn't work, I guess. So look, maybe I'm a complete idiot too. That's totally fair. Plenty of people say that. I totally fair. But again, I try not to use what happened as the barometer for good or bad decision, especially when it comes to bullpen decisions. I more like to use, did I agree or disagree with it when the move was made? And I really was not very passionately like, oh man, Alex Faedo really needed to stay in this ball game. But here we are. I think that also kind of points to the organization's belief that he's not a starting pitcher long term. That's a different conversation that we had yesterday and we can have again this offseason. I think that might be the biggest storyline of this, more so than just a decision in August. But okay, let's get into the bullpen, the players that actually did pitch out of the pen, and we'll talk about the two that did well and the two that didn't do well. And then we already talked about Cisnero Invest a little bit. We'll kind of go a little bit more in depth. And then we'll end by talking about Miguel Cabrera going yard because that's super cool. And then obviously a preview. We'll do that right after I tell y'all about our friends over at eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. And it's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part fits just right the first time around. Just add your ride to the My Garage and look for the green check to know if a part will fit or your money back, because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop at eBay Motors. With over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. So get the right parts, the right fit, and the right price at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Also going to tell you all about our friends over at Margs. This episode is brought to you by Margs Sparkling Margaritas. You guys know I love a good drink, and I've been trying to find the replacement for the typical White Claws and High Noons of the world. Thank goodness I stumbled upon Margs. They're refreshing, ready-to-drink sparkling margaritas, and they've officially become my go-to cocktail. They're crafted with Rio Blanco tequila. They're clean, crisp, and they genuinely taste so good. They've got 5 unique flavors, so there's something for everyone to enjoy. I drink these kicking back after work, watching a game on the weekends, hanging out with friends. I've been packing my cooler with these all summer, and I will continue to do so for the remainder of the summer. And then I think they're going to be the perfect tailgate drink this fall as well. A lot of fun football happening in the state of Michigan this fall, hopefully, right? Fingers crossed. And I'm going to have Margs in my cooler for those events as well. So visit sipmargs.com to find a retailer near you. That's SIPMARGS.com to find a retailer near you. Must be 21 and over to enjoy. Cheers, and please drink responsibly. Alrighty, everybody, welcome back. Third and final segment here at Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. Let's talk about the bullpen. Jose Cisnero goes, I don't know why this is. One of my biggest pet peeves is when I look at a scorecard and it says that somebody pitched 0+ innings. And like that is correct. Like that's how it's supposed to be done. I'm not saying that whoever the scorer is, that's probably how I'd force myself to write it, right? At events that I keep score at. But like it just bothers me. 0+ is so stupid to look at. And that's what I don't know why. This has been an issue my entire life. I have complained about this to friends that like when I was in middle school, I was complaining about this to friends and they still give me heat for it to this day. Like I just cannot stand the 0+. I don't even like 5+. Like, oh, you went out for the out there for the fifth, gave up 2 hits and got pulled. Like I just hate the plus. I hate it. I don't know why, but it's always bothered me. And Jose Cisnero gives you 0+ in this ball game. 2 hits, 3 earned runs, 1 walk. I believe. Well, Will Vest obviously gave up the grand slam right after, and that is so some of those Cisnero runs were at the expense of that. I mean, as far as how they looked out there, like Cisnero, I mean, he threw a lot of cutters, which like hasn't really been necessarily his forte on an outing to outing basis. I really only threw heat, and you know what, I I don't want to just like every time this dude pitches the remainder of his Tigers career, I'm just like, wow, we really should have traded him at the deadline. And like, I'm not saying that he had a big market, and I'm not saying we would have gotten a big haul for him. But like ever since I said, hey, we should probably trade him in like the middle of July, he's given up like a billion runs. And it's just it's very poetic. So now his ERA is like approaching 4.5, when at the beginning of July it was 2.9. For sure. For sure, dude. So I have a lot of appreciation for Jose Cisnero. There was a solid year and a half to even debatably 2-year stretch where he was objectively the best pitcher in this bullpen. But just a really, really weird year for Jose Cisnero, and tonight was no different. Will Vest then comes in. Like I said, Will Vest is as his ERA on the year is still only 3.19. But he went from really rough, you want to talk about a roller coaster of a year, really rough beginning of the season, comes back like to the point where he's not on the major league roster, comes back, does well, then unfortunately gets hurt, like does really well, then gets hurt, and now is back. And in his first 2 or 3 outings since coming back has just really struggled, unfortunately. Just a fastball slider pitcher. And yeah, I mean, he left a fastball that was very hittable, and it got absolutely destroyed to right field. I mean, that ball was crushed, dog. The grand slam, that ball was pummeled. So just command, really, and that's been the thing for Will Vest's entire career. To get back to like actually analyzing this and not just complaining about a home run, Will Vest's entire career has really been like, oh, he has solid enough stuff to stay. But I mean, like Seattle, you have to remember this dude was taking the Rule 5 by the Mariners, and he was really good for like a few weeks, and then his command was so rough and so inconsistent that they sent him back to us. And then obviously we have Feder and Nieves and now Lund. We have a great coaching staff that we talk about all the time on this show. And Will Vest obviously made some adjustments. He deserves the most credit, obviously. But since coming back from injury, it's only 2 outings, whatever, not freaking out about it. But certainly something that long-term he's needing to address. And in this short window has been no different. The 2 relievers that didn't give up runs were Vasquez and Brendan White. Vasquez goes 2/3 of an inning, 1 walk, 1 strikeout. The slider heavy guy. It worked. Not really too much else to say. Brendan White, 1 2/3, 2 hits, 1 walk, no runs, 2 strikeouts. This was really like experienced Brendan White baseball, kind of to a T. The walk and the hits were leaving like breaking balls that got way too much of the plate. And then the strikeouts were like really well located fastballs and breaking balls. So like it really is. He's just at that point where when he's hitting his spots, he is very like darn near unhittable. The problem is he's a 4.88 ERA because he is not hitting his spots very consistently. And this was kind of like everything all mixed into one. Didn't end up giving up any runs though, so hats off to him. Just want to end the show by talking about Miguel Cabrera going yard. There is a Goodness. I don't want to put a percentage on it, but there is a very real chance that that is the last home run of Miguel Cabrera's career. That is like not a far-fetched thing to say. He has 2 this season. That was his second home run of the year. The one earlier was against the Braves, and that was what, 2 months ago, 3 months ago? There is a super real chance that that is the last home run of his career, and any home run he hits from here on out, we're going to be having this same conversation. That's where we're at. This is close enough to the end of the road where every time he goes yard, we're looking around going, is that it? And we didn't even really say that with the one he hit earlier in the year, despite having no power. Everyone's like, okay, well, he's not going to end with 1 homer. He might end with 2. We got 6 weeks left. So I just want to say, appreciate the ride. And I've said this a lot lately, I feel like, but we're getting to that time of year where I think that's a justified conversation to have. We're getting close to the end of the Miguel Cabrera era. I am in my mid-20s, and the last time Miguel Cabrera was not on my baseball team, I was in elementary school. I was not even I was in 5th grade about to start middle school. I was in the middle of elementary school. That was the last time Miguel Cabrera was not on my baseball team. That's sad. Sad that era is coming to an end, and sad that every single homer he hits from here on out could be the last one. So appreciate it. Whatever he does from here on out, just really understand the magnitude of every single thing he does on a baseball field from here on out, because it's almost the end of one of the greatest careers any right-handed hitter has ever had. As far as today's matchup, as you're listening to this, it's a 1:10 Eastern game on Wednesday, so be sure to keep an eye on that. He cranked that ball, too. Oh, my goodness. He crushed that baseball. I just remembered the homer now. Oh, my goodness. Was that 438? He smoked it. Did the bow and arrow around second base. Nice little vintage Mickey. That was 92 down the pipe. That was, if there was ever a pitch to go Yabo on, But just pulled a heater, just upper deck, just absolutely smoked. Beautiful sight. Beautiful sight. 110 game, Reese Olson. We're obviously going to be looking to see how effective his fastball can be against Kenta Maeda, who we faced last series, just last weekend when we faced the Twins. Struggled early on, got hurt, came back from injury, has been a lot better. So we'll see what we get there. And then we head to Cleveland. To Cleveland for a 4-game set. The last 5 years of Tiger baseball, if you say going to Cleveland, does not induce a lot of confidence in you. So we'll see how that goes. We'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. Appreciate y'all. Peace and love. Do I have a usual sign off? I do. Appreciate y'all. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every day. We'll be back tomorrow recapping the series finale in this 2-game set against the Twins. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. Sorry if I was scatterbrained in this episode. It's a later show. I had a busy evening with work as well. So a little exhausted, but we'll be back tomorrow. Appreciate y'all greatly. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll see y'all then, baby. Go Tigers.